The dust stung Clara Harris's eyes as she knelt in the dirt of Sweetwater's marketplace, desperately gathering the scattered potatoes that had tumbled from her torn sack. Each one represented a precious meal for her starving children, and as her trembling fingers closed around the last spud, a sob escaped her throat. 3 months a widow, and the indignity of poverty still felt like a fresh wound each day. "Madam, you dropped this too," came a deep voice from above. Clara looked up, squinting against the harsh Texas sun of 1875. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the glare, a worn Stetson casting his face in shadow. When he crouched beside her, she saw kind eyes the color of worn leather studying her with something more than pity, something that made her heart skip a beat despite her grief. "I don't need charity," she whispered, though the hollows in her cheeks told a different story. The stranger smiled, lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes. "Not offering any, madam." He pressed something cool and heavy into her palm. "Just returning what's rightfully yours." Clara opened her hand to find $3 gleaming against her calloused skin. "There must be some mistake." "I didn't have no mistake," he said, helping her to her feet with a gentle strength that made her feel strangely safe for the first time since the accident at the mine had claimed her husband. "Name's Cole Foster, new farrier in town." He tipped his hat. "And you look like someone who could use a friend." As Clara clutched the silver coins, something flickered inside her chest, a feeling she'd thought buried alongside her Thomas. It wasn't just the money in her hand. It was the hope this stranger had somehow rekindled with a simple act of kindness. What she didn't know then was how this chance encounter would change everything for her children, and for the quiet cowboy who'd appeared like a mirage in her darkest hour. "I'm Clara," she finally said, her voice steadier than it had been in months. "Clara Harris." The marketplace bustled around them, but in that moment, it was as if they stood alone in the eye of a storm. Cole smiled again. "Pleased to meet you properly, Mrs. Harris." That evening, Clara sat at her worn kitchen table counting pennies by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. The $3 Cole Foster had given her would feed her family for nearly 2 weeks if she was careful. Her children, 7-year-old Joseph and 5-year-old Rebecca, slept soundly in the small bedroom they shared, unaware of how close they'd come to going hungry again. Clara rubbed her temples, exhaustion seeping into her bones. The tiny house at the edge of Sweetwater felt emptier than ever, despite the children's presence. Thomas had been gone just long enough for the initial shock to fade, leaving behind the grinding reality of survival. The mining company had provided a paltry settlement after the collapse, barely enough to cover the funeral and a few months' rent. Now, with winter approaching, she'd been stretching every penny until they nearly snapped. A soft knock at the door startled her. Visitors after dark were rare, especially this far from the center of town. Clara grabbed Thomas's old shotgun from beside the door before cautiously opening it a crack. Cole Foster stood on her porch, hat in hand, looking almost as surprised to be there as she was to see him. In the lamplight, she could properly see his face for the first time, square-jawed and weathered, with a neatly trimmed beard peppered with a few strands of silver, despite him appearing to be only in his early 30s. "Mr. Foster." Clara lowered the shotgun but kept it visible. "What brings you here at this hour?" He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Apologies for the late call, Mrs. Harris. I asked around town about you and—" He trailed off, seeming to reconsider his words. "I've got a proposition that might help us both if you're willing to hear it." Clara's grip tightened on the shotgun. She'd heard propositions before, from men who thought a widow with children must be desperate enough for any arrangement. "I think you should leave." "No, madam, nothing improper," Cole said quickly, a flush creeping up his neck. It's just I've taken over Old Man Johnson's farrier shop, and I'm swamped with work. Need someone to help with the books, maybe assist customers when I'm busy with the horses. Thought of you because Mrs. Peterson at the general store mentioned you used to keep accounts for your husband's mining crew. Clara hesitated. It was true she had managed all the paperwork for Thomas's team, even helping some of the miners' wives with their household ledgers. It had been a point of pride that she had more schooling than most women in Sweetwater. The pay's fair, Cole continued, and you could bring your little ones if needed. There's a small room above the shop that stays warm from the forge below. Why me? Clara asked, suspicion still coloring her voice. Plenty of people in town need work. Cole's gaze was steady. Because I saw something in you today, Mrs. Harris. Dignity. Pride. And from what folks say, you've got a head for numbers, which is more than I can claim. I'm good with horses and metal, not with ledgers. He paused. And maybe because I know what it's like to start over with nothing. Something in his voice, a hint of old pain carefully concealed, resonated with Clara. Still, she wasn't a woman to make hasty decisions, especially not with her children's welfare at stake. I need to think about it, she said finally. Cole nodded, replacing his hat. Shop's on Miller Street across from the livery. I'll be there from sunup tomorrow if you decide. He turned to leave, then stopped. Mrs. Harris, whatever you decide, those silver dollars weren't charity. Sometimes folks just need a fair chance. After he left, Clara sat awake long into the night. The idea of regular work was tempting beyond words. The few cleaning and mending jobs she'd managed to secure barely covered their needs, and winter in Texas could be surprisingly harsh. Pride warred with practicality as she stared at the silver dollars on the table. By dawn, she'd made her decision. The next morning, Clara stood outside the farrier shop with Joseph and Rebecca in tow. The children were unusually quiet, sensing their mother's nervousness. The building was larger than she'd expected, with a large workspace open to the street where the forge blazed. The scent of hot metal and horsehair filled the air. Cole emerged from behind a massive Clydesdale, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. When he spotted Clara and the children, a genuine smile lit his face. "You came," he said simply. Clara nodded. "I'd like to hear more about the position before I agree to anything." "Of course." Cole gestured toward a small door to the side of the main workspace. "Office is through there. Children can come too." The office was small but tidy, with a desk stacked with papers and ledgers. Cole pulled out the chair for Clara before perching on the edge of the desk. "It's straightforward work," he explained. "Keeping track of accounts, ordering supplies, scheduling appointments. I've been trying to do it all myself, but—" He gestured helplessly at the chaotic pile of invoices. Clara picked up one of the ledgers, noting the haphazard entries. "Your bookkeeping could use some attention." A chuckle rumbled from Cole's chest. "That's putting it kindly, Mrs. Harris." "Clara," she corrected, surprising herself. "If we're to work together, Mrs. Harris seems overly formal." Cole's smile widened slightly. "Clara, then." He named a monthly salary that made her eyes widen nearly twice what she could piece together from odd jobs. "That's very generous," she said cautiously. "It's what the work is worth," he replied with a shrug. "You'd be here from 8 until 4, 6 days a week. As for your little ones—" He glanced at Joseph and Rebecca, who were examining a horseshoe hanging on the wall. "The room upstairs has space enough. They can stay there while you work, as long as they don't wander into the forge area." Clara hesitated. "I should tell you that Rebecca can be spirited." Cole's eyes crinkled. "My sister had 6 children. I doubt anything would surprise me." He crouched down to the children's level. "What are your names?" "I'm Joseph Harris, sir," her son said politely. "I'm 7. "Rebecca," her daughter whispered, suddenly shy. I'm 5 1/4. Well, Joseph and Rebecca, I'm Cole Foster. I shoe horses and fix metal things. Would you like to see something interesting? With their enthusiastic nods, he led them to a small shelf and showed them a miniature horse he'd crafted from horseshoe nails. Made this during slow times. You can play with it if you're careful. As the children exclaimed over the trinket, Cole turned back to Clara. So, what do you say? Will you help me make sense of this mess? Clara looked at her children's faces, more animated than they'd been in months, than at the honest offer of work that would preserve her dignity while feeding her family. I accept, she said, extending her hand formally. When shall I start? Cole's calloused palm engulfed hers. How about right now? By the end of the first week, Clara had organized the chaotic bookkeeping system and discovered that Cole's business was actually far more profitable than he'd realized. His reputation for quality work had spread throughout the county, bringing in business from ranchers and travelers alike. The children adapted to their new routine with surprising ease. Joseph appointed himself Cole's unofficial apprentice, solemnly sweeping the shop floor and organizing tools with meticulous care. Rebecca set up a small world of imagination in the corner of the upstairs room, where she conducted elaborate conversations with the metal horse and other small trinkets Cole continued to craft for her. Clara found herself watching Cole when he wasn't looking, the careful precision of his hands as he shaped hot metal, the gentle way he spoke to even the most difficult horses, the patience he showed her children. He was a man of few words but thoughtful actions, bringing fresh milk for the children without making a fuss, or leaving a small posy of wildflowers on her desk when she arrived in the mornings. One afternoon, as autumn painted the Texas landscape in golds and russets, Clara was balancing the monthly accounts when she noticed a discrepancy. Cole, she called, walking into the forge area where he was shoeing a rancher's mare. Do you have a moment? He finished driving in the last nail and patted the horse's flank before turning to her, wiping his hands on a rag. Something wrong, Clara showed him the ledger. You've been paying me more than we agreed upon. Cole didn't look surprised or embarrassed. You've brought in more business with your organizational skills. Seemed fair you should share in that. You should have discussed it with me first, she said, though without real irritation. He studied her for a moment. You're right, I apologize. The rancher, collecting his horse, chuckled. You two sound like an old married couple already. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks, while Cole suddenly became very interested in arranging his tools. After the rancher left, an awkward silence fell between them until Cole finally spoke. There's a harvest festival in town tomorrow evening. Thought maybe you and the children might like to go. As a celebration of your first month working here. Clara looked up, surprised. She hadn't attended any social events since Thomas's death. Partly from grief and partly from pride, she couldn't afford new dresses or gifts, and charity was still something she struggled to accept. I don't know if that's appropriate, she began. Just as friends, Cole said quickly. For the children, there'll be games and such. Joseph, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, rushed forward. Can we go, Mama, please? Billy Matthews said there's going to be apple bobbing and a contest for the biggest pumpkin. Looking at her son's hopeful face, Clara found she couldn't refuse. Very well, but we won't stay late. The Harvest Festival transformed Sweetwater's town square into a riot of color and activity. Lanterns hung from every available post, casting a golden glow over the festivities. The scent of roasted corn, cinnamon, and apple cider permeated the air. Clara had spent the previous evening altering one of her old dresses, adding a new collar fashioned from scraps of lace she'd been saving. It wasn't new, but she felt almost pretty as they walked toward the square, Cole beside her and the children skipping ahead. "You look lovely," Cole said quietly, the lantern light catching the auburn highlights in her dark hair. "Thank you," Clara replied, flustered by the simple compliment. "It's just an old dress." "Wasn't talking about the dress," he said, then cleared his throat and quickly changed the subject, pointing out the various booths to the children. As the evening progressed, Clara found herself relaxing for the first time in months. Cole won a small doll for Rebecca at the ring toss and patiently helped Joseph try his hand at horseshoes. When the fiddles struck up a lively tune in the town square, couples began to gather for dancing. "Care to dance, Miss Rebecca?" Cole asked with exaggerated formality, bowing to Clara's giggling daughter. He hoisted the child onto his boots and waltzed her around the edge of the dance floor, her peals of laughter drawing smiles from onlookers. Clara watched them, a strange tightness in her chest. It had been so long since she'd seen her daughter so carefree. When Cole returned with a breathless Rebecca, he hesitated before turning to Clara. "Your turn," he asked, offering his hand. "Oh, I shouldn't," Clara began, but Rebecca pushed her forward. "Dance with Mr. Cole, Mama. He's very good." Before she could protest further, Clara found herself guided onto the dance floor, Cole's hand respectfully at her waist, his other hand holding hers. They moved together to the music, and Clara was surprised to discover he was indeed a skilled dancer. "Where did a farrier learn to waltz?" she asked, trying to ignore the pleasant warmth of his hand through her dress. A shadow passed briefly over his features. "My mother insisted all her children learn, said it was a civilized skill, no matter what path life took us on." "She sounds wise," Clara said, curious about this glimpse into his past. Cole rarely spoke of his family or his life before Sweetwater. "She was," he said simply, and something in his tone told Clara not to press further. As they danced, Clara became uncomfortably aware of whispers and glances from townspeople. Widow Harris, dancing not 6 months after burying her husband. The thought made her stiffen. Cole noticed immediately. "Would you rather stop? People are talking," she murmured. He glanced around, his jaw tightening slightly. "People always talk. Question is whether you'll let them decide how you live your life." His words struck a chord. Since Thomas's death, Clara had been so careful about appearances, about doing what was expected of a grieving widow. But who was she protecting with her self-imposed isolation? Not her children, who were thriving under Cole's kind attention. Perhaps not even Thomas's memory her husband had been a man who laughed easily and lived fully. "Let them talk," she said with sudden determination, and allowed herself to enjoy the simple pleasure of the dance. Later, as they walked home under a canopy of stars, the children drowsy from excitement, Cole carrying a sleeping Rebecca, Clara felt a sense of contentment she'd thought lost forever. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "The children needed this. Perhaps I did too." Cole's smile was visible in the moonlight. "Glad to hear it. Everyone deserves some joy, Clara." When they reached her small house, Cole carefully transferred Rebecca to her bed while Clara tucked Joseph in. They met again on the porch, the night quiet around them. "Will I see you at church tomorrow?" Cole asked, lingering at the steps. Clara hesitated. She hadn't attended services regularly since the funeral, finding the pitying glances too difficult to bear. "I'm not sure. The new preacher's quite good. Less fire and brimstone, more practical advice for living." He shifted his weight. "I could escort you and the children if you'd like." The offer hung in the air between them. Accepting would make a statement to the town, not that they were courting precisely, but that they were something. Friends at least. "Yes," Clara found herself saying, "we would like that." Cole's smile was worth any gossip they might face. "I'll be by at 10 then." He tipped his hat and turned to leave. "Cole," Clara called after him. When he turned back, she added, "Thank you for the silver." He looked puzzled. "What silver?" "The first day we met. The silver dollars you gave me." Understanding dawned on his face. "Oh, that. It wasn't really mine, was it?" Cole shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "You needed it more than I did." "Why did you do it? You didn't know me." He was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "When I came to Sweetwater, I had nothing but the clothes on my back and my tools. Took a chance on buying Johnson's shop with the last of my savings. First day, a stranger came in, ordered new shoes for his entire team of horses, and paid half up front. That money kept me going until more work came in." He looked up at the stars. "Sometimes we all need someone to believe in us enough to invest in our future." With that, he tipped his hat again and walked away into the night, leaving Clara with a warm feeling that had nothing to do with the mild autumn evening. Church the next morning brought exactly the stares and whispers Clara had anticipated, but with Cole beside her, head held high as he escorted her family to a pew. She found she cared less than expected. The new preacher, a young man with kind eyes, spoke of community and supporting one another through hardship, a message that resonated throughout the simple wooden church. After the service, as they stood in the churchyard, several townspeople approached to greet them. Mrs. Peterson from the general store squeezed Clara's hand warmly. "Lovely to see you back, dear, and the children look well." She glanced approvingly at Cole. "Mr. Foster has been a fine addition to our community." Clara was formulating a response when she noticed a tall, elegantly dressed woman approaching, her expression cold. Vivian Thornton, the banker's wife and self-appointed arbiter of Sweetwater's social standards, looked Clara up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Mrs. Harris," she said with a tight smile. "How progressive of you to join us today, and with Mr. Foster as well. People are talking, you know." Cole stepped forward slightly. "Good morning, Mrs. Thornton. Wonderful sermon today, wasn't it? About not judging others and showing Christian charity." Vivian's lips thinned. "Indeed, though some might say true charity begins with proper behavior." Her gaze flicked to Clara's mended dress. "Speaking of charity, the Ladies' Aid Society is collecting gently used clothing for the less fortunate. I imagine you might benefit from their efforts, Mrs. Harris." Clara felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, but before she could respond, Cole spoke again, his voice deceptively casual. "Actually, Mrs. Thornton, Clara is my business partner now. The shop has never run more efficiently." He smiled pleasantly. "In fact, I noticed Mr. Thornton's account is several months overdue. Perhaps you could remind him when you see him next." Vivian's face flushed an unattractive shade of red. With a mumbled excuse, she hurried away to join another group of churchgoers. "You shouldn't have done that," Clara murmured, though gratitude warmed her voice. "She'll make things difficult." Cole shrugged. "She already does. Tried to have Johnson's lease revoked when I bought the business, said a drifter wouldn't be good for the town." His eyes crinkled. "Besides, I wasn't lying. You are my partner now. The business is thriving because of you." His words stayed with Clara throughout the day, through the simple Sunday dinner they shared at her house, through the lazy afternoon of Joseph reading aloud while Cole taught Rebecca to play checkers. Partner. The word held weight, respect, something Clara had been missing since finding herself alone. As autumn deepened toward winter, their routine solidified. Cole would arrive early at the shop, and Clara would bring the children mid-morning after completing essential household chores. They would work side by side through the day, sharing a simple lunch, often joined by the children when they tired of their games in the room above. Clara found herself laughing more, the hollow ache in her chest gradually filling with something new. Not forgetting Thomas, never that but learning to carry his memory differently, as a part of her rather than an open wound. Then came the day that changed everything. A cold snap had descended on Sweetwater, bringing unseasonable sleet that coated the roads in treacherous ice. Clara had kept the children home, sending word to Cole through a neighbor's boy that she would come alone once the weather cleared. By mid-afternoon, the sleet had turned to a steady, cold rain. Clara was preparing a stew for dinner when a pounding at her door startled her. She opened it to find Mrs. Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife, her face pale with worry. "Clara, come quick. There's been an accident at the forge. Cole's been hurt." Terror gripped Clara's heart. "How bad?" "Bad enough. Dr. Matthews is with him now." Clara turned to her neighbor, who had followed Mrs. Peterson to the door. "Can you watch the children? Please?" At the woman's nod, Clara grabbed her shawl and rushed out into the rain, her heart hammering against her ribs. The short distance to the forge had never seemed so far as she slipped on the muddy road, rain soaking her dress and hair. When she burst into the shop, the scene stopped her cold. Cole lay on a makeshift pallet near the forge, his face gray with pain. "Doctor." Matthews knelt beside him, wrapping a bandage around Cole's left thigh. Too much blood had soaked through the fabric. "What happened?" Clara gasped, rushing forward. Cole's eyes flickered open at her voice. "Clara," he murmured, "shouldn't have come out in this weather. Doctor." Matthews looked up. Horse spooked during shoeing, kicked him and knocked him into the forge. Burn on his arm, deep gash on his thigh, possible broken ribs. Clara knelt beside Cole, taking his hand. His skin felt clammy. "Why didn't you send for me immediately?" "Didn't want to worry you," Cole said, his voice strained. "The children are fine," she interrupted. "It's you I'm concerned about." Dr. Matthews finished securing the bandage and stood. "He's lost a lot of blood, but the wound is clean. My concern is infection." He lowered his voice. "And he shouldn't be alone for the next few days. Is there someone who can stay with him?" "He'll come home with me," Clara said without hesitation. Cole tried to protest. "Clara, the gossip, hang the gossip," she said fiercely. "You've taken care of us for months. Now it's my turn." With the help of 2 men from the livery stable, they managed to transport Cole to Clara's small house. Her neighbor, bless her, had already prepared the children for the situation, explaining that Mr. Cole was hurt and needed their help to get better. They settled Cole in Clara's bed, the only proper one in the house, while she made up pallets for herself and the children in the main room. Joseph appointed himself Cole's official helper, solemnly bringing water and extra blankets, while Rebecca insisted on placing her favorite doll beside him to keep him company. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat beside the bed, bathing Cole's forehead with cool water. His fever had risen, his skin hot to the touch as infection fought to take hold despite the doctor's careful cleaning. "You don't have to do this," Cole murmured, his eyes opening briefly. "Your reputation is less important than your life," Clara finished firmly. She adjusted the compress on his forehead. "Rest now. We can argue about propriety when you're well." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before he drifted back to sleep. Clara watched him, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the furrow of pain between his brows even in sleep. When had this man become so important to her? When had his welfare become intertwined with her own happiness? The next few days passed in a blur of worry and exhaustion. Clara barely slept, checking on Cole throughout the night, changing bandages, coaxing broth and medicine past his lips when he was conscious enough to swallow. The fever raged, then broke, then returned with frightening intensity. On the 3rd night, when the children were asleep and the house quiet except for the crackle of the fire, Cole became delirious. He thrashed weakly against the blankets, murmuring names Clara didn't recognize, pleading with unseen figures. "Sarah, I'm sorry." Should have been there. Clara held his hand, speaking softly to calm him. It's all right. You're safe. His eyes opened, but Clara knew he wasn't seeing her. The fire couldn't reach them. Sarah, the baby. A chill ran through Clara that had nothing to do with the winter wind rattling the window panes. Cole had never spoken of a wife or child, but his anguish was unmistakable, the grief of a man who had lost everything. "Cole," she said gently, pressing a cool cloth to his brow. "It's Clara. You're at my house. You're safe." For a moment his gaze cleared. "Clara." His fingers tightened around hers. "Don't leave." "I won't," she promised, and continued to hold his hand until he fell into an exhausted sleep. By morning, the fever had broken for good. Cole woke weak but lucid, embarrassed to find himself in Clara's bed, more embarrassed still by the vague memories of things he might have said during the fever's height. "How much did I reveal?" he asked quietly when Clara brought him breakfast, a simple porridge she could afford now thanks to her regular income from the shop. Clara sat on the edge of the bed. "Enough to know you've suffered a great loss." She hesitated. "You spoke of Sarah and a baby." Cole's face tightened with old pain. "My wife and daughter." He looked away. 5 years ago, I was away delivering a special order to the next town. By the time I returned, his voice broke. Clara took his hand, understanding now the shadows that sometimes darkened his eyes, the reason he'd arrived in Sweetwater with nothing but his tools and memories. "I'm so sorry, Cole." He met her gaze, his eyes wounded but clear. "For a long time I just drifted. Couldn't bear to stay in our town, but couldn't find peace anywhere else either. Then I saw Johnson's shop for sale." A faint smile touched his lips. "And then I saw you, kneeling in the dust, too proud to ask for help but needing it all the same." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both trying to rebuild lives we didn't choose to lose." Cole's fingers tightened around hers. "Perhaps that's why we understand each other." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken feelings, until Rebecca's voice called from the other room, breaking the spell. "I should see to the children," Clara said, reluctantly withdrawing her hand. "You need to rest." As she rose, Cole caught her wrist gently. "Clara, thank you for everything." Over the next week, Cole recovered his strength rapidly. Clara insisted he remain at their house until Dr. Matthews declared him fit to return to work. But by the fourth day, he was sitting at the kitchen table helping Joseph with his letters and insisting on teaching Clara how to make proper biscuits, a skill he claimed his mother had considered essential for any self-respecting person. The children blossomed under his attention. Joseph, especially, shadowed Cole's every move, soaking up stories of horses and far-off places. Rebecca brought Cole her small troubles and treasures with equal solemnity, clearly considering him part of their family circle. And Clara found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle patience he showed her children, the quiet strength in his hands as he whittles small toys for them in the evenings. The gossip in town reached new heights, of course. Widow Harris, taking in the bachelor farrier, nursing him in her own home. But for once, Clara found she truly didn't care. Let them talk. She knew the truth that they were two people who had found unexpected friendship in the aftermath of tragedy. If sometimes she caught Cole looking at her with something warmer than friendship in his eyes, well, that was a complication she wasn't ready to address. By the time Christmas approached, Cole was fully recovered and back at work, though Clara had insisted on shortened days until his leg completely healed. The shop was busier than ever, with travelers preparing for holiday journeys and local farmers needing equipment repaired before winter truly set in. One evening, as they closed up the shop together, snow beginning to fall in soft flakes outside, Cole turned to Clara with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I have a proposition," he said, echoing his words from months ago. Clara raised an eyebrow, setting aside the ledger she'd been balancing. "Another one. Your last proposition worked out rather well, I'd say." He smiled briefly before becoming serious again. "This one's different." He took a deep breath. "I'd like to expand the business, not just shoeing horses and fixing tools, but making things too. Decorative ironwork, household items, the kind of craftsmanship that commands premium prices." Clara nodded slowly. "That makes good business sense. Your small pieces are beautiful. The thing is," Cole continued, pacing now, "I'd need a true partner. Someone with a head for business who could handle the books and customers while I focus on the creative work." He stopped and faced her directly. "I'm asking if you'd consider becoming my formal business partner, half ownership, half the profits." Clara stared at him, stunned. "Cole, that's—" "I don't know what to say. It's incredibly generous, but it's not generosity," he interrupted firmly. "It's practical. You've already increased our business by 30% with your organizational skills. This is an investment in our future." He hesitated, then added more softly, "In the children's future, too." Our future. The words hung in the air between them. Clara knew this was about more than business. It was Cole offering her security, independence, a way forward that preserved her dignity while providing for her family. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Cole nodded, clearly having expected nothing less. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, as Clara tucked her children into bed, Joseph looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mama, is Mr. Cole going to live with us again?" Clara smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "No, sweetheart, he's all better now, so he's staying at his own place." "But he could live here," Joseph persisted. "We have room." "It's not about room, Joseph. Mr. Cole and I are friends and business associates." Rebecca sat up in her bed. "Billy Matthews says Mr. Cole is sweet on you, Mama. He says you're going to get married." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Billy Matthews should mind his own business," she said firmly. "Now it's time for sleep." After kissing them good night, Clara sat by the fire, turning over Cole's offer in her mind. It was a generous proposal, more than generous. With half ownership in a thriving business, she would never have to fear poverty again. Her children would have opportunities, security. But was it right to accept? Despite Cole's insistence that it was a sound business decision, Clara knew there was more to it. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wouldn't notice. The care he took with her children. The quiet moments of connection that had grown between them over the months. Did she want more than friendship from Cole Foster? The question made her heart race. Thomas had been gone less than a year. Was it disloyal to feel this fluttering in her chest when Cole smiled at her? Yet Thomas himself had always said life was for the living. "If anything happens to me," he'd told her once, "don't waste your life in mourning. Find happiness again." At the time, she'd scolded him for such morbid talk. Now, his words seemed like permission to live, to hope, perhaps even to love again. The next morning, Clara arrived at the shop earlier than usual, determination in her stride. Cole looked up in surprise as she entered, setting aside the sketch he'd been working on. "Good morning," he said cautiously. "The children, with Mrs. Peterson. She was happy to watch them for an hour." Clara unwrapped her shawl and hung it by the door. "I've been thinking about your proposal." Cole straightened, his expression carefully neutral. "And I have conditions." Clara met his gaze steadily. "First, I want everything in writing, a proper contract that protects both our interests." "Of course," Cole nodded. "I've already spoken to Mr. Barnes about drawing up the papers. Second, I want to be clear about our arrangement. If we're to be business partners, we need to define boundaries." Cole's eyebrows rose slightly. Boundaries? Clara took a deep breath. Yes, because I find myself confused sometimes about what this is between us. She gestured between them. Are we friends? Employers and employees? Something else entirely. A slow smile spread across Cole's face. Something else entirely, he said softly. At least I hope so. He moved closer, stopping just before her. Clara, when I came to Sweetwater, I wasn't looking for anything except a place to work and forget. Then I saw you in the marketplace and something woke up inside me. Something I thought had died in that fire along with Sarah and our daughter. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. Cole, let me finish, he said gently. I know it's too soon. I know you're still grieving Thomas, still finding your way, and I would never rush you or pressure you, but I want you to know that my feelings for you go far beyond friendship or business. He took her hand, his touch warm and steady. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Clara looked into his eyes and saw everything he wasn't saying, the loneliness he'd endured, the hope she'd rekindled, the future he could imagine with her and the children. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted, but I do know that when I'm with you I feel possibilities, happiness. Things I thought were gone forever. Cole's smile was like sunrise after a long night. Possibilities are a good place to start. Impulsively, Clara reached up and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Yes to the partnership, Cole Foster, and yes to exploring these possibilities, slowly. His hand came up to gently cup her face. I can do slowly, he murmured. I've gotten pretty good at patience these last few months. The bell over the shop door jingled, announcing a customer. Cole reluctantly stepped back, though his eyes still held hers. We'll continue this discussion later, he said, his voice holding a promise that sent a pleasant shiver down Clara's spine. Yes, she agreed. We certainly will. Christmas arrived with a blanket of fresh snow and a sense of anticipation Clara hadn't felt in years. The partnership papers had been signed the week before, making her officially co-owner of Foster and Harris Ironworks. The expanded business already had orders for decorative pieces from as far away as Austin, thanks to a merchant who had passed through town and been impressed by Cole's craftsmanship. Clara had used her first official profits to buy small gifts for the children, a jackknife for Joseph, who beamed with pride at being trusted with such a grown-up tool, and a porcelain doll for Rebecca, replacing the tattered cloth one she'd loved to pieces. For Cole, she had secretly embroidered handkerchiefs with his initials, a small token that felt inadequate given all he had done for them. On Christmas Eve, Cole arrived at their house with his arms full of packages and a small pine tree strapped to his back. The children shrieked with delight, having never had a Christmas tree inside their home before. It's not very big, Cole apologized as he set it up in the corner of the small main room, but I thought we could start a tradition. Clara caught her breath at the word tradition. Something ongoing, a promise of future Christmases together. They spent the evening decorating the tree with paper chains the children had made and small wooden ornaments Cole had carved. When the children finally went to bed, vibrating with excitement for the morning, Clara and Cole sat before the fire, a comfortable silence between them. I have something for you, Cole said finally, reaching into his pocket. It's not much, but... He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Clara unwrapped it carefully to find a silver locket on a delicate chain. When she opened it, she found a tiny portrait of Joseph and Rebecca, their faces captured with remarkable detail. How did you? Had a traveling photographer stop by the shop last month while you were at the mercantile. The children were excellent subjects. Cole looked suddenly uncertain. Do you like it? It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received, Clara whispered, tears pricking her eyes. She fastened it around her neck, the silver cool against her skin. I have something for you too, though it pales in comparison. She handed him the handkerchiefs, neatly wrapped and tied with a ribbon saved from a package of fabric. Cole opened them with as much care as if they contained gold, running his fingers over the embroidered initials. "No one has made anything for me since my mother," he said quietly. "Thank you, Clara." On impulse, Clara leaned forward and kissed him not on the cheek this time, but softly on the lips. It was a brief touch, gentle and questioning, but it sent warmth cascading through her entire body. When she pulled back, Cole's eyes were wide with surprise and something deeper, more intense. For a moment neither spoke, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the winter wind outside. "I've been thinking," Clara said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "about possibilities." Cole's hand found hers, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. And I think I'm ready to explore them more fully." She met his gaze. "Thomas would want me to be happy, to give the children a father who loves them." "I do love them," Cole said immediately, "as if they were my own." Clara's heart swelled. "I know they love you too." She took a deep breath. "And I think I'm falling in love with you, Cole Foster." The joy that transformed his face was like nothing Clara had ever seen. "Clara Harris," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have been in love with you since I saw you gathering potatoes in the dust. I just never dared hope you might someday feel the same." This time, when he kissed her, there was nothing hesitant about it. His lips claimed hers with gentle passion, his hands cradling her face as if she were made of precious glass. Clara melted into him, her arms sliding around his neck, feeling truly alive for the first time in too long. When they finally parted, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he murmured, though he made no move to release her, "before I forget myself entirely." Clara nodded reluctantly. "The children will be up at dawn." Cole stood, pulling her to her feet alongside him. "Clara," he said seriously, "I want to do this properly. Court you as you deserve, with the respect due to a lady of your quality." Clara couldn't help but smile. "I'm a widow with 2 children and a newly minted business partnership, Cole. I'm hardly a delicate flower." "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he corrected, "which is why you deserve nothing less than honor in this." He kissed her once more, briefly but with feeling, before collecting his coat. At the door, he turned back. "Merry Christmas, Clara." "Merry Christmas, Cole." After he left, Clara touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the imprint of his kiss. For the first time since Thomas's death, the future stretched before her not as an endless struggle for survival, but as a path filled with promise. The winter months passed in a haze of happiness for Clara. True to his word, Cole courted her properly, bringing small gifts for her and the children, taking them on Sunday drives in a borrowed buggy, asking permission to call on her in the evenings. The town buzzed with gossip, of course, but even Vivian Thornton had little to criticize in such a proper courtship. The business thrived under their joint management. Cole's artistic ironwork became sought after throughout the county, while Clara's organizational skills kept everything running smoothly. They complemented each other perfectly, his creativity balanced by her practicality. By the time spring arrived, painting the Texas landscape with bluebonnets and Indian paintbrush, Clara knew with certainty that what she felt for Cole was not merely gratitude or friendship, but deep and abiding love. Different from what she'd shared with Thomas, neither lesser nor greater, simply different, shaped by who they were now and what they'd both endured. One warm April evening, Cole took Clara for a walk along the creek that wound behind the town. The children were ahead of them, Joseph teaching Rebecca how to skip stones across the water. "They've grown so much these past months," Cole observed, watching Joseph patiently demonstrate the proper wrist motion to his sister. Clara nodded, pride warming her voice. Joseph's reading has improved tremendously, and Rebecca's becoming quite the little artist I found her sketching your ironwork patterns yesterday. Cole chuckled. Perhaps we'll have another blacksmith in the family. The casual reference to family made Clara's heart skip. They walked a few more paces in comfortable silence before Cole stopped, turning to face her. "Clara," he began, then hesitated, uncharacteristically nervous. "I had a whole speech prepared, but now that the moment's here, I find I can't remember a word of it." Clara's pulse quickened. "A speech about what?" Instead of answering, Cole reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. Dropping to one knee there beside the creek, wildflowers nodding around them in the gentle breeze, he opened it to reveal a delicate silver band with a small pearl nestled at its center. "I made this," he said softly. "Melted down those silver dollars from the first day we met. Seemed fitting somehow." Clara's eyes filled with tears as understanding dawned. "Clara Harris," Cole continued, his voice steady now. "You brought light back into my life when I thought all brightness was gone forever. You and your children have become my world, my reason for waking each morning. I love you, your strength, your dignity, your kindness. I love Joseph's curiosity and Rebecca's spirit. I want to build a life with all of you if you'll have me." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Clara couldn't speak past the emotion tightening her throat. Then she heard Thomas's voice in her memory. "Life is for the living, Clara," and knew with certainty what her answer must be. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Cole Foster, I will marry you." Cole's face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to gather her into his arms. Their kiss was a promise, a beginning, witnessed only by the Texas wildflowers and the two children who had turned at their mother's exclamation. Joseph and Rebecca raced back, faces alight with curiosity. Cole knelt again, this time to be at eye level with them. "I've asked your mother to marry me," he explained seriously, "and she said yes. But I want to ask you both too because we would be a family together. Would you like that?" Joseph's solemn nod contrasted with Rebecca's excited bouncing. "Does this mean you'll be our papa now?" she asked, her eyes wide. Cole glanced up at Clara before answering carefully. "I would be honored to be your papa, Rebecca, but I know you had a father who loved you very much. I wouldn't ever try to replace him in your hearts." Joseph considered this. "I think my pa would like you," he decided finally. "He always said taking care of family was the most important job a man could have, and you take care of us real good." Clara brushed away tears as Cole hugged both children. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise I'll do my best every day to deserve this family." They walked home together as the sun set, casting long shadows across the path, the children running ahead with the boundless energy of youth. Cole's hand held Clara's, his thumb occasionally brushing across the pearl ring that now adorned her finger. "When should we have the wedding?" Clara asked as they neared town. Cole smiled down at her. "Whenever you wish. Tomorrow or next year. I'm just grateful for the promise of a future with you," Clara considered. "Not tomorrow," she decided with a laugh. "But not next year either. Perhaps early summer when the wildflowers are at their peak." "June, then," Cole agreed. "A new beginning with the new season." They were married on a perfect June morning, the church decorated with wildflowers gathered by the children at dawn. Clara wore a new dress of pale blue, with Rebecca as her flower girl and Joseph standing proudly beside Cole as his best man. The entire town turned out for the celebration, even Vivian Thornton, who had gradually warmed to Clara after Cole crafted an elaborate iron gate for the banker's home at a discounted price. The feast afterward sprawled across tables set up in the town square, with music and dancing continuing until dusk. As Clara and Cole shared their first dance as husband and wife, she leaned her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy," he murmured against her hair. "More than I ever thought possible again," she answered truthfully. "Thank you for the silver that day in the market," Cole chuckled. "Best investment I ever made." Later that night, after the children were asleep in their beds and Clara had become Mrs. Foster in every sense, she lay in her husband's arms, watching moonlight pattern the walls of their bedroom. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Clara smiled in the darkness. "I was thinking about dust." "Dust," he repeated, puzzled. About how sometimes life reduces us to kneeling in the dust, gathering what little remains." She turned to face him, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "And how sometimes, when we're at our lowest, someone comes along and sees value in us that we've forgotten exists." Cole pulled her closer. "We saved each other, I think." Clara nodded against his chest. "We did, and now we build something new together." Outside their window, the Texas night hummed with life, cicadas singing, a distant coyote calling to its pack, the rustle of wind through cottonwood leaves. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Clara and Cole Foster began the first night of their shared future. Two broken hearts made whole again through love's patient healing. 1 year later, Clara stood in the doorway of their expanded home, watching Cole teach Joseph the basics of ironwork at the small forge he'd built behind the house. Rebecca sat nearby, sketching the scene with surprising skill for a child not yet 7. At Clara's feet, their newest family member, 3-month-old Thomas Cole Foster, slept peacefully in his cradle, untroubled by the Texas summer heat. Life wasn't perfect. There were still difficult days, moments when grief for what they'd lost shadowed their happiness. But those times grew fewer as the months passed, replaced by the joys of their blended family and growing business. Clara touched the silver locket that still hung around her neck, now containing portraits of all 3 children. From market dust to this abundance, it seemed almost miraculous. Yet it had happened one small step at a time, beginning with a moment of kindness when a cowboy had placed silver in her hand and, unknowingly, hope in her heart. "Mama, look," Rebecca called, holding up her drawing. "I made Papa's eyes crinkly when he smiles." Clara smiled at her daughter's observation. Those crinkles around Cole's eyes were indeed one of his most endearing features, signs of a man who had known sorrow but chosen joy nonetheless. As if sensing her thoughts, Cole looked up from Joseph's lesson and caught her gaze across the yard. His smile, those wonderful crinkles in full evidence, warmed her from within. "I love you," he mouthed silently. "And I love you," Clara returned, her heart full to overflowing from dust and ashes, from grief and loss. They had built this life together, not perfect, but perfectly theirs. And as the Texas sun painted the sky in shades of gold and promise, Clara Foster knew with absolute certainty that hope, once kindled, could indeed light the way through the darkest of times to a future brighter than she'd ever dared imagine.